Hello, Ohio, good morning, wherever you are, whatever time it may be. Welcome to Altissia. Altissia is the capital of Accordo, a southern continent in the world of Final Fantasy XV. In this location, which is where Chapter 9 takes place, Luna must commune with Leviathan in order to give Noctis the ability to prove his worth against the Hydrian and gain the favor of the gods in order to fulfill his destiny. This chapter, this very set of battles and environments, was subject to a series of trimmings and content cuts throughout the years, and as the deadline loomed for the game in 2016, lots and lots and lots of the city had to go. As you can tell, there's tons and tons and tons of modeled buildings, but in the final game you can only visit this little tiny area and a little bit of this area, because this sends you to Totemostro, which is where the arena fighting occurs between the animals and monsters. But we're not talking about that. We're not even talking about the cut bits of Altissia over here or over here that have modeling that we can't even ever visit. We're going to be talking about Leviathan. Placed around the center of the game, Leviathan serves as possibly the biggest set piece in the entire game, and serves as one of the biggest set pieces in all of Final Fantasy and video games. The battle is so gargantuan that everything after doesn't quite come up to the large-scale war that occurred in this particular chapter. And as a result, all that chaos and conflict itself proved to be a little too intense for the PlayStation 4. If you watch any old trailers, you'll see things like teleporting between airships, or being inside buildings while they're toppling and being tumbled by Leviathan, or fighting off against Niflheim with your friends, all while also battling Leviathan, an epic three-way war that doesn't really come across in the final game. Today we will be covering this Leviathan battle, and given what I have here is the debug version of Final Fantasy XV, we can actually find old location data and mission data for the older version of the Leviathan battle before they had to trim it down and cut everything for time and polish. Being such an intense boss fight, Leviathan stole a year of the developers' time that they could have spent on Terra Verde or adding stuff to the end game, anything at all to the rest of the game. But
so, you want to do this the hard way? Fine!
So initially, when the battle is to begin, you finish up your talk with First Secretary Claustra at her manor.
Are you and Wescom lovers?
Then after, you guys ride a gondola from that water wheel area over there. And on that gondola, you briefly talk before Noctis... the screen fades to black and Noctis winds up in this plaza, already here during Luna's speech. Now in this plaza, we can actually see that it goes off into every corner, and the whole thing is completely modeled with collision enabled. As a matter of fact, if we come in here, we can actually see where the gondola over there was supposed to head here, was supposed to take you. Because if you go in here, there's the gondola with water, but it leads straight to a dead end. No big deal, whatever. However, at the other end is this. Completely modeled, completely detailed, unused. Up here, the entire area modeled and detailed intricately. Presumably because you're meant to walk around, but in the game proper, after you ride the gondola, you fade to black and wind up here. Surrounded by people on every side, you take 2 steps and then immediately jump into a cutscene. Before we go on the rest of the layout real quick, I'm just going to go over this area real quickly to show that we can travel each corner and witness how much detail they actually put into it. So over here, a corner we'd never ever see or ever use, modeled, detailed. The only way you'd see it is if you glitched out of bounds.
Anything happened while I was gone? Yeah.
Probably a mission or a photo op or some item would be here. But moving on. Again, it's fully modeled. Collisions enabled so we can't fall off. The railing here is a little tricky if you try and jump over it, but otherwise it's still, you can't go that way. It blocks you from going up to Luna's podium, even though you can't normally get here anyways. If you come over here, again another area, unused, unseen, completely underutilized, unless you were to glitch over here or use Debug. And now, after that cutscene, it fades to black over here. It cuts to Luna and her speech. Then after the speech, Noctis sees the Niflheim ships above, another fade to black, and he actually is sent over here. Again, fully detailed, fully modeled, collision enabled. Such nice attention to spacing here. An area that never ever gets used, almost like you could have been fighting here. But you weren't fighting. You would go down this hallway, and you would find this fence right here. You can't get through it, showing they intentionally barred it off so that you couldn't walk this way. And on the other side of this fence is where Noctis is actually dropped off after that cutscene with Luna. After he sees the ships ahead, Luna summons Leviathan, and Noctis teleports to this hallway over here, where he actually starts the whole Leviathan set piece. The weather even changed because I came to the area where it's supposed to be. But soldiers would come out, you do a bit of combat, you'd run out this way, see some ships falling down, more troops coming out, Leviathan would be shooting water spouts at you the whole time and the ships, but mostly it's just 2 hallways. It is connected to the main path, and it is possible to get here if it was enabled, but after that you would come over here, fight some more enemies, and then see Leviathan up top, run up these stairs, and you'd initiate a cutscene, where Luna and Leviathan have a bit of a back and forth, before Luna smacks Leviathan with her holy spell, and promises that you, Noctis, will fulfill your duty and complete the covenant. But after this cutscene, Noctis is called by Prompto and is told to jump. So you jump. Noctis grabs onto one of the Niflheim spears attached to the big ships, and you guys swing around Altissia here for a second like Tarzan. You have a quick time event where you're defending against Leviathan's water spout projectiles. Then after, you make contact with Leviathan and immediately begin the battle with Leviathan in the center area, where you again briefly fight with your main powers before Luna gets stabbed, spoiler alert, to which Noctis then goes Super Saiyan, fights Leviathan, and that's that. All in all, it's around 20 minutes if you're taking your time with it. Not a very, very, very big set piece, but after this video you'll come to understand that not only was it indeed actually planned to be bigger, and they did try it like some of the data and leakers remarked, but data is actually in the game for all the old quest markers and whatnot and progression. But to start, we will return simply to the very beginning, just to have a visual cover, because right off the get-go, you probably notice I'm flying and jumping through the air. Wonderful tool thanks to the power of Debug. With Debug we can do things such as load guests into our party when they shouldn't be. Like we could put Core in our party right now, or Arne, or Iris, or Arden even. Or we could give ourselves all the items at the start of the game. Things like that. However, throughout the Debug menu, many items are blank or empty. And that's because there's no corresponding English text. A lot of that text that's blank was only used by the developers. Some of that text corresponds to older versions of the main story epic battles with the gods. Leviathan contains all the data that shows how the original mission was to progress. So, no further hesitation, let's dive into the debug menu and start. So first off, the very top item we'll be picking is the debug. Go down to main story, and then we have the developer menu, which it says old next to it because it was used for by the developers during the actual development. The debug ROM would have been used, the people that had the debug ROM would have been using this, the quality assurance, as they would have only been testing the game to make sure it works. Anyways, we will pick the developer menu. It'll give us a brief empty text box, presumably because they deleted the text corresponding to it. And then we'll go down to mission debug, because this is where we can find the information for Leviathan. Here are all of our summons and all that, but we only care about the bottom one, Leviathan. And again here, we're going to care only about the top one. These bottom two have to do with cutscenes and other things, but we're focusing on the mission here, the battle. And again, ignore these bottom two, not important. We're focusing on battle. Here we have our mission details, our debug naming for each of the eternal flags. These first two are for Luna's speech. One's before, so as you're in the crowd and you get to hear Luna's speech, and one after, which is when you guys hear about the Niflheim soldiers. After that, you have an interesting little set of naming conventions here that inform us to how it was meant to progress. So first off, after the Luna speech, you would run through the area here, get up to Leviathan, and then you would begin this part here, which is landing ship battle, or landing boat battle. Landing boat and landing ships being the Niflheim dropships that drop down Niflheim Magitech troops, aka the scene from the trailer in 2013 where Noctis is teleporting between ships. And so after Luna's speech and before Trial 1, what do we have here is landing ship. Where does it drop you? It drops you right here. Now remember this little spot right here, because this area has some importance based on the rest of the mission parameters, because the entire Leviathan mission area is pretty much here. But landing ship battle, it drops you here, presumably because this whole area was supposed to be covered in Niflheim airships that you'd be teleporting between. And after the landing ship battle, dealing with the giant ships and the mini ships and Leviathan sitting there knocking ships out of the sky, presumably Noctis would have been knocked off the landing ship, or the landing ship would have crashed over here. Why? We'll cover why a bit more in detail in a sec, but for now let's just deal with the walkthrough. So after you would the speech, you'd run up there, you would jump off and start teleporting around between ships, a la 2013 trailer. And then presumably, given as we saw in the 2013 trailer, with things being knocked over and destroyed and buildings toppling while you're in them and ships crashing while you're in them, Noctis probably would have simply been tossed over here. Now this area you might recognize from episode Ignis. I did check. It is not the same area as episode Ignis, because not only do they add more topography and buildings to this area, but the collision for all the Ignis areas that Ignis can go to isn't actually present, whereas the path corresponding to the mission listing for Leviathan is actually full of not just collision data, but flags and objects placed by the developers, presumably because they intended to actually detail these areas for, because you're actually meant to see them. Like here, you were meant to go down there. That's not a solid area, I believe. Trees is there because it wants some greenery, but over here, Noctis would have presumably landed right on this thing. It has collision, and it is next to this little lamppost right here, which I highlight as an important area because that's presumably where this big set piece would have started. So, after the set piece would have occurred, after the whole airship battle, you would encounter Trial 1. What is Trial 1? Trial 1 is simple. It spawns the big snake herself. So after landing ship battle, which we just did, we are flying around and we crash landed here. Trial 1 begins. Leviathan spawned. She's not doing anything, presumably because all the flag data for what she's supposed to be doing right now directs to the main game's series of events, not this legacy outdated version. But given it's Trial 01, Leviathan is presumably now attacking you. Because she's attacking you, Noctis, having landed here on a waterway unceremoniously after a big ship crashed, he now has to teleport over here. And I stress teleport because you can't actually get to this main area from these side parts. So these are probably going to be full of debris and whatnot. Noctis teleports here, presumably to the lamppost as a big thing for him to warp strike to. And you have objects placed because you're meant to be here. You would follow this path. It splits, but I believe that this area would have been blocked off, just because of how this area here is set up. But it comes down this way. Little brief area here. Probably would have been an item. And then it converges with the other path over here. But given how it's laid out and how the collision works on this little upper area, this part would have probably been like full of ships or something, or like debris blocking you from going this way. Like you would have walked this way, boom, then you had to run this way. Because over here is a sizable area, big enough that you would have probably been fighting some Niflheim troops, all the Leviathans raining down spouts on you. Again, the big three-way battle. You come down here, you probably would have had the choice to go this way for treasure, but if you continue this way, we progress to the next part. Right here. Right here is where the next flag spawns. The next flag is called F2F, or Revelations. What is F2F? Face to face. Why? Because you're coming this way. You come this way and are now face to face with Leviathan. Given her position, I'm speculating, but I believe she would have destroyed that tower. And given that's face to face and called Revelations, it was probably a cutscene right here. Maybe even the one where Luna vows that Noctis will actually complete the Covenant. Because the very next flag is right in front of us. So we go back to the debug menu again. Main story. Leviathan. After face-to-face Revelations, this little cutscene area, I imagine Noctis would have ran out there, and Leviathan knocking that building would have blocked this area, because right away you can tell that there's no staircase or anything leading up to this lip, which I don't think would have made sense unless it was intended to be blocked off by a giant building placed in just the right spot for Leviathan to break it. But this area, this flag here, I'll bring it up again just so I can, in case people want the text. This flag here, that right after F2F, is Leviathan Splash Endurance Battle. Presumably because after Revelations and Luna prays that you'll succeed and complete the task, Leviathan would have assaulted you with a large amount of water spouts. Well, all while Niflheim soldiers keep falling down and jumping down and testing you. So the endurance battle is just you trying to survive here against Leviathan and Niflheim attack. And the endurance part might have actually been incorporated into the final game, because when you're on the spears in the final game, flying around the city, you're defending against water spouts in a quick time event. That, most likely, in my speculation and thinking, is what would have happened here along with soldiers. You're enduring. This interesting little brick wall here, it's modeled out in such a way, and it's something that we don't ever see, considering where it's located. So for them to go through all the detail and trouble of modeling this brick wall texture as well, it was absolutely intended for us to actually be here as Noctis, given the flags for Noctis' Leviathan battle end here. I'm guessing this would have been a full wall, and then it would have been blown out, presumably by your friends, Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto, because they actually are supposed to show up next. After this endurance battle, your friends show up. Noct, over here! So you run this way, come up here. You probably had a little save area right here. It's an item or something, given this particular area got extra detail. So you run up here. Probably pick up another item here, some missables. And then you have this building right here, which is super interesting because right away you have this room, modeled, textured, unique textures, and big enough for you to probably have a bit of a scuffle with somebody. Da-da-da-da-da. The next room, again, another detailed room with tons of detail. The carpet, the plants, the chairs, the little things on the tables. Details that presumably wouldn't have been done later on development as they were trying to save on resource and memory. But anyways, again, the next flag, after the endurance battle, would have been, because again right now at this point you're on your own fighting Leviathan. Noctis is solo, but for the next flag after the endurance battle, you have what is simply known as Trial 03. What is Trial 03? Well, when you boot up Trial 03, it sets you here with your friends. Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto are given to you in the party. Now, I don't think that you're meant to get them right here. You probably got them down at this, at the very least you saw Prompto or Ignis probably break a hole in the wall so that you can get through. And then you'd rendezvous up here, where you guys would come in here, and then, fight someone for a sec. You'd run out and engage in Trial 3. Because right away, you see Leviathan there again. Very, very poignantly. You'd think, do you go straight this way? No, no, no. You go to the left. Because this is where the interesting part comes in. There's old mission data showing that you were intended to, with the help of your friends, remove spears from Leviathan's body that the Empire was shooting at her. So, with this text in the game, and this Trial 03 specifically giving you your friends, you would come here, jump down to another modeled area with, again, geometry and objects placed for you to see, and you would have the area where you and your friends would actually fight soldiers and probably remove spears from Leviathan's body, because this area branches out. You have this big chunk here, you'd fight a few enemies there. You'd probably have an extensive battle here, some soldiers, maybe a mech or two, and then you would remove one of the spear shooters from that were shooting the matter room here. Again, you would probably do the same thing in the entire area. Come up here. Mechs, soldiers, area here for spears, an area here where spears are getting shot probably. All being shot at Leviathan. So you and your friends would actually be... This is the area where you would be getting rid of the spears in Leviathan's body, and it goes all the way up here, actually. So trailing that path of collision this way, down to here, all the way to these little islets, we can again continue following the path, seeing more detail intended for us to witness, considering how close we were going to get to this area. Presumably jump over down to here, or maybe even up here. But probably I'm gonna say down here just for the sake of the video. Down here, more areas for removing spears from Leviathan, attacking more soldiers, more troops. Across here, more soldiers, more spears. And then at some point you were probably going to wind up warp striking the rooftops. Because the next area over here is the last bit of area we can actually walk on without any issues. The buildings here, not all the buildings here have collision, but there is enough that it still, and given how the placements are made, like the pathway here, it's intended for us to walk this way and continue fighting Niflheim soldiers and removing spears and whatnot. Now after this, after Trial 03, you're at this area, which again, if you recall, this area here is where you spawn in at two different points. The first point we saw earlier, which is where the ship battle actually drops you, landing ship battle. But after landing ship, what exactly is the next, or after Trial 3, what's the next mission after your friends help you get the spears out? Well, after that, Niflheim's not a problem anymore. The spears are gone, the ships are all crashed at this point. All that's left is the main thing. So we come to, after Trial 3, we have Tornado Battle, which, if we boot it up, will load in the collision data for the center area, and then it's going to toss Noctis here, because this is where the actual battle would start. So, given, again, that it's right here, you were probably going to teleport from this area. I imagine a cutscene would have probably placed you up here, but this whole area is at the very cusp of it, and right after, the next spawn point for the next mission is just over here, indicating you probably would have had some reason to come over here, or maybe you would have ridden a ship. Who knows? But the next thing after that, Trial 03, would be the actual Leviathan fight after, because at this point, Niflheim's no longer a problem. And then the very last debug mission is simply the final battle against Leviathan, where you go Super Saiyan. So, to recap Luna's speech before, which is when you get to see her speech, Luna's speech after, which is when you get the confirmation that they're here, the Niflheim soldiers. Landing ship battle, the E3 2013 battle that we saw where we were teleporting between ships and crashing into things, because I'm going to boot this again and notice where we actually spawn. Landing ship battle. we spawn right next to this statue. And if you remember the 2013 trailer, one of the big parts of the Leviathan battle was Noctis would jump off the thing there, teleport onto Niflheim ships, and one of the ships would crash into the statue, with Noctis clinging onto the statue as the ship topples the whole statue over, and then Noctis would continue to run through parts of the, Noctis is probably actually going to run through these areas over there in the earlier version of the airship battle before you would wind up crashing in this region, where you would begin the trials and other things, before eventually winding up removing the spears and then moving on from there to the actual battle with Leviathan once you took care of the external threat. And then from there on, Leviathan battle as we see it in the final game. After all this time, the data from 2014 still present in the game. A reminder of the devs' passion and desire to give us exactly what they promised, only to be met with the reality of the PlayStation 4's specs. Because even now, on my PC, high-end, that runs the game at 4K 60 FPS, Altissia is the only part of the entire game that causes slowdown or stutter of any kind, from 60 to 50. Not much, but if it does that on my PC just in Altissia, imagine what it did to the PlayStation 4 back in 2013 and 14 and 15 that caused them to go from making the battle over the course of a few months to being a full year of their time, causing them to focus on this at the detriment of things like Terra Verde and Niflheim. It even has full collision. But with all that said, all that revelation about the Leviathan battle's original quest lines and the old data pointing to missions that can no longer be, I say we end things on a happy note. So, that's right. The one thing we wanted more than anything. To see Lady Lunafreya. And if you're here, you're a fan of the cut content of the game, missing and reminiscing about what could have been. Which means you're also well aware of Dawn of the Future. I say, who needs Dawn of the Future? Just like that. Together at last. 10 years later. Da. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.